Hey, Jim Francis here. It is Friday, October 12th. We're just over 3 weeks away from one of the most important elections of our lifetime. I know candidates say that every single time that there's an election, but I think you can see and you know that this probably really is one of the most important ones in your lifetime. And we have a lot going on. We've been canvassing for weeks. We're in 4 big places this weekend. We're in Hammond and Houma and Metairie and Orleans, and we're working on getting out to Kenner and getting out to Plaquemines and everywhere else. But I got to tell you, one thing that's amazing me, I meet people, Republicans, and they'll tell me they're going to vote for Steve Scalise, and I say, okay, great. Could you just tell me why? I'm kind of curious, just for my own personal knowledge. Like, why do you want Steve Scalise to stay? And they can't give me an answer. One person told me a very specific reason why he wants Steve Scalise to stay in power, and that's because he's voting to get rid of the horrible banking regulations that they put into place after the massive recession we had in 2008. I didn't get into it with them, that those protections are put there obviously so that we never have to go through all that again and really cause a recession throughout the entire world. But I asked him, I go, okay, great. What do you do? He's a banker. But every single other person, and I mean hundreds that I've asked the same question to, it's always, my cousin's brother was a friend of his in college, or my niece's third nephew knows him and says he's a nice guy. Okay, well, he is a nice guy. He doesn't vote nice, but he's a nice guy. He's got a personality. But you got to look at the outcome. It's that whole, don't judge a book by its cover. He's got a nice little cover onto his book, but when you go through those pages and you look at his voting record, it is amazingly alarming and corporately owned. I talked to these people who say they're going to support Steve Scalise or vote for him, and they're unaware of any of his votes. Zero. They do know that he voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act twice and take away their coverage for pre-existing conditions, and they are upset about that. They're not happy with that. And these are the Republicans I'm talking about. That's okay. Thank God they didn't get rid of the Affordable Care Act, but they are getting rid of it now in their own way, and that's a whole other video. But what I wanted to say is that as I'm talking to the people, they'll ask me, they'll say, why do you think I won't support Steve Scalise? He's a Republican. He's the majority whip. Why would we give that up? That's sad. You're right. You are absolutely correct. He is the majority whip. Too bad he doesn't use that power to do anything for the 1st Congressional District here in Louisiana. Too bad that he doesn't use that power maybe to vote for women's rights or to vote for protecting battered women. He has voted 0%, zero, in favor of supporting women's rights or protecting battered women. This district and Louisiana, we are environment. I mean, that is what our state pretty much is. He votes 1.9% in favor of environmental protections while his state is eroding and falling into the Gulf and Lake Bjorn. People don't know that. They have no idea. They assume he's doing something to protect Louisiana. It's erosion. It's flooding. Not doing a thing. Now, that could be because we've had over 230,000 oil and gas wells drilled in Louisiana and had so much gas and oil sucked out of Louisiana that The ground now has to fill that void deep in the ground, and we're getting sunken areas all throughout the state because of so many wells. Flooding is a real issue now, in addition to the erosion, everything else. And these diversion tactics they're trying to do to get the sediment to work, in different areas, doesn't work. Fishermen are out there begging, stop diverting rivers. You've done enough damage. We need to aggressively address our coastal erosion, which affects everything. And we're only talking about the coast. We've got issues throughout half the state. Big environmental issues. And they are talking about him as though he's doing something about it, and he's not. In fact, all he could do for flood insurance was get a 2-week extension, temporary. Good job, Steve. There's a lot that could be done if you were a majority whip. But when you vote in the interests of big business 100% of the time, it tells me that you aren't listening to the actual middle class worker who is tired and sick of this last 10 years, stagnant wages, actually making less, seeing the wealthy get extremely wealthy. They're tired of it. Steve, you vote in favor of big business 100% of the time. Whatever they want, you give them. You support taxing the wealthy 0% of the time. And I can see that those kind of correlate. You do anything a big business wants you to do, and you don't tax rich people. But you do tax and support taxing the middle class 92% of the time. 92% of the time you vote in favor of raising taxes on the middle class, directly affecting every single person that votes for you. That may not be so bad if you didn't vote 100% of the time in the interest of corporations. Or that you never, literally 0% of the time, vote in favor of raising taxes on the wealthy. You slipped up there, If your votes were maybe, 30% of the time you vote to raise on wealthy, but you don't. So you're making it extremely transparent and very easy to understand. And when I provide this information, which I am doing, people start to seriously change their opinion of you. You also vote 0% of the time for consumer protection. That's unbelievable. You know how many millions of people that are hurt every single year through faulty design of products that are sold and mass marketed? It is Steve Scalise's wish that you could not actually go and sue that company for deliberately releasing faulty products that hurt them. It's unbelievable. He also votes 0% of the time in favor of labor and organized unions. The one thing that actually brings the middle class higher wages, more opportunity, more security in their retirement, everything else. 0% votes never in favor. Another very alarming stat. He talks a lot about crime and how he's strong on crime. But yet he votes 0% of the time to support bills that would reduce poverty. The amount of crime that you have in your community correlates almost directly to the amount of poverty that you have. If you're going to be so tough on crime, Steve, why don't you get tough on poverty? That's something you could do. And if you won't, I will. I will come in and I will support reducing the footprint of poverty in every community, and therefore reducing the amount of crime. It's almost just simple math, but you just cherry pick what you want to support. and you're not supporting the right causes. Cause and effect. The effect of poverty is crime. So address poverty. It's not that hard. It's really not. A lot of people in the 1st District live on very low wages, and their companies lay them off. They're out of work, and you have voted 0% of the time in supporting a robust safety net. And we're talking about the people who get laid off and don't have another job to go to in the 1st District. And you don't want to do anything to help them in possibly the worst times of that person's life. The worst times of that voter's life. They gave you their vote. And you don't return anything on that investment. Not surprisingly, Steve Scalise votes 0% for any, at all, sensible gun legislation, while 72% of Americans who are gun owners say we absolutely need some sensible gun legislation. I would never try to remove the Second Amendment or your right to access the Second Amendment and own guns and everything else. We're just talking about some very simple little things that could help reduce the amount of violence, the amount of gun crime. Putting guns in the hands of teachers, Steve, is a horrendously bad idea. I have talked to hundreds of teachers. Not one has said that, yeah, give me a gun, that's a great idea. Police officers, trained police officers, only hit their mark 22% of the time. And you want a teacher to have a gun and be the sole defense against a person coming in with an AR-15 with a room full of little kids. If a police officer can only accurately hit a target 22% of the time, what do you think the teacher is? Now, some teachers might be fantastic, okay? Maybe 80% of the time. Let's just go with 80 and say that every teacher is a better marksman than any police officer out there. Still means 20% of the bullets that they shoot are not landing in their intended target. It's 20% of the bullets that will potentially end up in a child. But this is your solution, Steve. This is your solution that you choose to back instead of actually addressing the issue, the cause and effect. Why do we have so many mass murderers? So many people that want to shoot up and cause as much carnage and damage as possible. I can tell you why. For one thing, it's mental health coverage. And your attempts at repealing the Affordable Care Act are undermining people receiving mental health coverage, because until the Affordable Care Act came, the vast majority of Americans didn't have any mental coverage. Mental health coverage is going to lead directly to lower numbers of mass shootings, guaranteed. Absolutely, cause and effect. Address the underlying issue. That's the one thing Steve is really, really good at, and that is he will not ever address the underlying issue. It's hard to explain. It really is. We need to make changes. You know that. I am a very, very safe alternative to Steve Scalise. In fact, some would even say I'm a better option than Steve Scalise. Don't fall for the Democrats are bad and Republicans are good belief. I could go into so much about the Democratic platform and why I'm extremely proud to be a Democrat. What we're doing, what we've done for this country. Things that you take for granted today, Democrats fought for, and Republicans resisted. I know you wouldn't want to give up your Social Security, Medicare. But if we allow the Republicans to win, you would not have that. You wouldn't have a retirement. A lot of you. I am a safe alternative. I'm a better choice. Please inform yourself if you're a Steve Scalise supporter. I'll put a link right below here, and you can go look for yourself his exact votes. And it's very clear. It's a yay or a nay on every bill he's ever voted for. And you can see with your own eyes from a government website. Okay, not some independent. This is the actual government website that tracks every vote that comes in through the House and the Senate. And you can see how every single person in Congress voted for it. And you will see him vote against the Violence Against Women's Act. You'll see that. How do you justify that, Steve? I'm Jim Francis. I am asking for your vote. And that is a vote that is also going to bring in some common sense back into governing. I will work with Republicans. I want progress. That's all I want. I want to start getting things done. We've had 10 years of nothing getting done here, Steve. Please, you'll make millions working for lobbyists and corporations as soon as you leave Congress. Why don't you go do that? You can spend more time with your family. You're not in the best of health, obviously. Jim Francis.